Hello, beautiful Aquarius, and welcome to our April 2021 reading. This is a potent month for creativity, for growth, for transmutation via exploring the contours of our growth, the contours of how we've changed, for expanding into new understanding of who we are now. And Aquarius, especially for you, the message just came so loud and clear. What story do you want to tell about yourself? About the role different hard experiences have had on you, about how you see yourself within the story, about how you talk about yourself within the story, and who you want to be going forward. What is the mythology you want to build for yourself going forward? This is such a great place to re-empower, to use the power of our minds, right? To improve the quality of our lives, to improve the way we perceive and interact with this very dynamic, interactive world. It is an extremely interactive world where you can have all sorts of conversations, not just with words, but with perceptions and with feelings and with all of these things. And this message came through really strong for Aquarius this month, I think because there's so much energy in Aries. And this is just a couple signs over from you. This is third house energy, which has to do with our throat chakra. It has to do with the thoughts we have in our day. You know, this is about like those quick thinking thoughts that we have throughout our day. And we have Mercury, Sun, and Venus all moving through there for a good chunk of this month. They then shift into Taurus, which then brings Aquarian energy a little bit more into our home environment and where we feel safe and anchored and mothered and nurtured. So these are two very interesting aspects to get highlighted this month. The new moon is in Aries as well this month, and we have a full moon in Scorpio in your 10th house of who you're becoming. So there's a ton of symbolism here around how you talk to yourself, how you tell your story to yourself, not just other people. This is about the secret conversations you have with yourself, because Aquarians, I think you have some good self-respect. I would not say that I think of you guys and think of you all as being like predominantly hard on yourselves, but I would say that there is a part of you that is really hard on yourself, that is really critical, that is very much wanting perfection, wanting to excel, wanting to be the best, wanting things to go well for you. And that has a tendency to bring out a part of our storytelling to ourselves that has to do with our failures and where we've lacked and where our traumas have kind of confined or defined us. And that's not to say that, like, I know trauma lives in the body and I know that it takes time, but what I am saying is how are we thinking about ourselves matters. And this month is a really potent month for you to do just that. So let's get shuffling here on the cards. The energy, and I've been saying this for quite a few readings, but the collective energy, it's like these bright, vibrant colors. I just think of a canvas and like splotches of a really intense purple, orange, red, yellow, just these really rich colors on that canvas. When I think about that kind of like high speed, really rich, hyperpigmented Four of Pentacles, very interesting color, I think about how that kind of energy, it's really exciting, right? But it has a lot of velocity to it. So wherever you're putting your emphasis, your energy, your focus in April will tend to have a ton of energy behind it, so it'll go really fast, right? So that's exciting, right? Because I think we've all been kind of craving that type of energy and that type of playfulness. I think it's a double-edged sword though, because if you happen to be in a state where you're feeling a little weaker, you know, or you're going through thoughts that maybe don't feel so good, you know, or you're reverting maybe back to some thought processes that you've used in past years in your life, because rewiring and our thoughts, another card wanted to come out, Three of Pentacles, I love it, takes time and practice. And some of those circuits in our minds are really strong. But you know, if you're feeling a little like you're having a tough day, it can kind of sometimes feel like the momentum picks up really fast and takes you with it. Five of Cups, Transmutation, my friends. Oh man, I love it. I love it, and I'll tell you why in just a moment. And the moon. Okay, we're not messing around today, Aquarius, are we? You know, it's not to be forgotten that you now have Saturn with you, and even Jupiter. These two are really, I mean, Jupiter to me, it's like having this spotlight on you, you know, like Jupiter is really great for expansion, for new opportunities, but it also leaves very little room to hide out in old behaviors, to hide out in the corners of who we've been. It kind of shines as brightness on us and we have to change with it. So when Jupiter is with you, it's strong too, and so is Saturn. So we are doing that in the Aquarian family right now. That is so true. And like I was saying, this month with the velocity and the momentum behind energy and behind thoughts this month, it can feel sometimes like those darker thoughts can take us with them. So just, you know, I'm not trying to freak you out and make you like way overthink your thoughts, because that's a whole mind loop in itself. What I am saying is this is a great month to rewrite, to re-empower yourself with your story, to actively get back there, get to the writer's desk of your life and write the narrative you want to have. I was noticing just before we get into the card, just like a personal side of that, you know, I was realizing that I was starting to tell a really disempowered version of my story to myself at the end of this winter, because it's just been a really tough winter for everybody I know. We were all just kind of wiped out, and I was getting really low energy by the time we hit March, and I was starting to just tell this story of myself that was really wonky, you know, just of me being like incapable and unable to handle the amount of growth, and how did I even get to this awesome place when I don't even feel ready, all of these things, and it was feeling really bad. So just taking the time to be like, I am so excited that I took the time to connect with this. And I was remembering how I had actually really visualized and envisioned the things that were happening, these amazing things that are happening in my life, and that I absolutely am a part of that creative process. It's not just stuff happening to me. So there's just an example. And let's talk about these cards, because they are intense, right? These are very introspective cards. They're very honest cards, and it's quite a mixture, I would say, of things. And here's the thing. One thing I'm noticing is if some signs are getting these very introspective, almost heavy-hitting cards, and I think our initial response often to something like that is to say that this is going to be a month of slowness, or that in getting those cards, it's about doing less, or like being less potent, or having to go underground. And I often find that if we're getting cards like this, actually it's an indicator that there's a lot moving forward in our lives, because the more that we are changing in life and the more that we are growing into ourselves and transforming, the more likely it is that we're going to have to do some contraction, and we're going to have to do some self-reflection within the context of that. We don't just go forward and grow a whole bunch and say like, I'm not feeling anything. Remember growing pains as a kid? Got to rest in between, right? Okay, so first off, Four of Pentacles. This always denotes to me that there's some big leap in life that is calling to you. And it's been calling to you for a little while, but it makes you really nervous, because it means you're going to have to take a little bit of a leap of faith without knowing how it's going to play out, and having to trust yourself, right? And that can be really scary. And timing will always be right. You know, you may need some time to sit with this. And I always say too, with Four of Pentacles, it's important to take your time listening to this part of yourself, not self-betraying by pushing too hard, right? Four of Pentacles is there for a reason. It's a rest point in order to understand what it is you're trying to undertake. And I think a little resistance is fine, you know. But here's the thing, there's this leap of faith that has to do with other people too. You know, it's not about you just being alone in the world, just doing things on your own. This is about some kind of growth, some kind of opportunity, some kind of open door that's really powerful for you. And, you know, this is a card of creative momentum. These are co-creators. These are people that share a vision with you. These are people that you can do work with. And I think there is such a vulnerability in sharing ourselves with others, like in creativity, especially almost. I feel like it's undervalued how much vulnerability there is there, how much there is a leap of faith, how much there is leaving behind the known. Because creating with others and connecting with others and starting to share our vision outside of ourselves and with the external world, right, with other beings who are in dynamic relationship with us, it means we have to leave behind the comfort of hiding in our comfortable shell where we know how things go, we know what's going to happen. These cards speak to you kind of like sharing more of your soul self with the world, bringing more of that hidden self into the world. And that in and of itself is a leap of faith every time. And I know about that. Believe me, I know about that. Now, here's the thing as well. What I'm noticing is you are going to unfamiliar territory this month. You're starting to dabble in places that you don't know well. And because you want to, and these are things you're wanting to explore. But here's what happens when we start to explore new parts of ourselves and new avenues in ourselves and new avenues in our lives. We go through a grieving process, and we go through a process that makes us feel as though we aren't ready or it's scary. And that's what Five of Cups really represents. It's that meeting point between the grief and the nervousness about picking up what is next, and how there's this interesting mingling that happens as we grow and as we morph and as we expand into ourselves, that it's hard to express. I think this card really expresses it, that is a really natural part of exploring our new shape, exploring our expansion. And I think there is a natural grief that comes with leaving behind the familiar, even if the familiar is something we no longer want, even if the familiar is something that we've kind of done. And we're like, okay, I've done that. Like, I'm ready to move on, right? Like, there is something that happens no matter how ready we are to move on, where we have to like fully grieve what we are moving on from. And so there's a complexity going on here, Aquarius, because what I see is that things are changing a lot for you. Things are changing really, really intensely for you. It almost is like that feeling of being like a kid going to camp and feeling a little sad about it because it's like everybody's new and you don't have friends. And I'm not saying you don't have friends, but like the emotion of it, of being in a new landscape, being in an utterly new territory and not really knowing how everything works yet. That's kind of how I feel. And the thing is that the moon showed up here. The moon for me is always your soul is speaking to you. Now, of course, the moon card has two sides. The other side is that you can lose your mind wandering around in the moonlight for too long, looking up at the moon, wandering around in the hidden for too long. You can start to kind of dissolve and become all very like relative, right? And that has its own with hang-ups. But the moon itself, just as a card showing up to me, that speaks to your soul is pulling you forward. This isn't just some random thing that you suddenly came up with. There are these shifting landscapes happening. There's this huge vulnerability showing up in the reading here. And for me, this is something that it has been coming up for you. This is a result of a long process. This is not the result of some fluke from 10 years ago. Or from yesterday. This is something that's been coming up in you for a long time. And I want to just acknowledge that the most exciting shifts and changes, the most exciting connection with our souls when we're really listening to that is sometimes the scariest, the most vulnerable thing you can do. And especially initially, when you're initiating new things, when you're initiating new exploration, it can be really scary. And that's what I'm seeing in these cards. It's not that there's anything particularly bad happening, but there is a transformation occurring and there are new inroads being made. And that means that there's a process of grieving and vulnerability that is huge, and bringing your soul more into the physical world and not just keeping it in the hidden is huge as well. And this is where, going back to the message I had for you, was this is a really great month to rewrite your mythology. Don't write yourself in as somebody who can't handle your life, who can't handle grief, who isn't worthy of these beautiful changes. You know, write yourself in as somebody who is absolutely worthy and present and capable of tackling all of this and full of trust and full of clarity of knowing. Write yourself in that way, and it really will make a huge difference. This is an important, powerful, vulnerable time for Aquarians, so please take care of yourselves. I'm seeing that in the cards, and I really want you to know you are not alone. I'm right there with you, honestly. Like, when I see these cards, I can relate to this process because I've been changing hugely, and most of the changes are just so awesome, but they're scary, and grief comes up in places I'm like, whoa, I did not expect to have grief in that place, right? Like, that's just wild. So I understand, and I'm right there with you. If you're looking for more support this April, I would love to see you over on my Patreon. We're going to be doing tons of activations, tons of chats, and I let you into my little world, personal world a little bit more. So if you're looking for some extra support, we got weekly chats, we got planetary activations, we got all sorts of things over there. You can also find me, of course, here for all our moon magics. I'd love it if you stuck around to join this little family. Like, subscribe, really helps me out. And you can also find me on Instagram and my website, and of course, PinkLune's lovely jewelry on her Etsy shop as well. So all those links will be in the description box. I love you all so much. I really do, Aquarius. I hope you have a beautiful April. Take really good care of yourselves. Keep going. Write yourself a beautiful story, and I'll talk to you in May.